This episode of the My Latin Life podcast is brought to you by Bitrefill. Bitrefill is the best way to spend your crypto in Latin America. Purchase gift cards or mobile refills from more than 3,500 brands in 186 countries instantly, safely, and privately. Visit bitrefill.com for more information. Welcome back to the My Latin Life podcast. Since 2014, My Latin Life has been your trusted guide to traveling and living in Latin America. My guest today is Jonny Hodl, host of the Staying Free podcast. Jonny, how's it going, man?
Yeah, it's going good, man. Yeah, thank you a lot. Thank you very much for inviting me on your podcast. I'm happy to be here.
Absolutely. Where are you calling in from today?
So I'm in Puerto Vallarta at the moment, which is on the west coast, the Pacific coast of Mexico. So it's a beach town or a large beach town, kind of small beach city, which is considered to be one of the safest places in Mexico, normally in the top two. So yeah, that's where I'm at the moment. I'm planning on leaving here in not too long. I've been here for around about probably 2 years now.
Oh, wow.
Kind of on and off. But yeah, planning on leaving here soon. The summer is pretty brutal, so probably planning to live somewhere a little bit more cool. Just maybe somewhere a bit more higher altitude, somewhere probably more in the middle of Mexico. But yeah, for now I'm here, and it is a great place. Would definitely recommend it if your listeners don't already know about it.
Well, you endured the whole winter or the whole summer rather, because you're going to be leaving in November. So you're leaving at when the good weather starts.
I know, yeah. It just happened to work out like that. I'm kind of at that age where it's just constant wedding season. So I have a couple of weddings back in Europe that are happening over the winter time, which that's the main reason for going during the winter. But yeah, it is kind of painful to be doing that. Like you said, I've enjoyed the whole summer here and then going during the best months. But it is what it is. You can't always necessarily plan for these things. But in an ideal world, it would have been the other way around. You're right, staying here during the winter and then going elsewhere in the summer.
Yeah. Where are you from in Europe? Help us locate the accent.
So I'm from Yorkshire, which is in the north of England. My accent is a little bit mixed, to be honest. I have kind of moved around a lot, and yeah, my parents aren't from where I'm from. They didn't grow up there, so I've got I already had a mixed up accent, and then from just living in different countries, I think that my accent's become even more muddied. So a lot of people think Australia. I get Australia a lot. Some people think American, but no, it's actually Yorkshire. So I'm from the north of England. Yeah.
Okay, cool. Yeah, I've been to the Yorkshire Dales. It's a beautiful place.
Yeah. It's a very beautiful part of England. I mean, personally, for me, I think that compared to other places around the world, I find the English kind of, I guess, countryside, you call it, like the rural areas. I find it generally less beautiful than a lot of other places. I'd much rather, go somewhere that you've got either, I guess, really nice jungles or something like that, or even some of the forests. But I think in the UK we don't have that much open space. Honestly, it's just quite built up. It's quite a built up country, and a lot of the rural areas, especially around me, it's a lot of it's actually farmland rather than kind of forests with lots of trees and just kind of that you can really get into the wilderness. So it's a nice place, and it is quite unique, and it's got a charm to it. But personally, for me, I don't. I much prefer other places that I visited. I like really kind of going deep into some very rural places. Out here we've got the jungle. It's for me that's nature.
I feel you. I know what you mean. Um, so let's do a bit of your backstory because actually I don't even know it. I first heard about you, I think, on the Expat Money podcast with Mikkel Thorpe, if I'm remembering correctly. You guessed it on
Oh
that.
yeah, yep.
So I heard about you there. Then I looked you up on Twitter, saw the podcast, saw that you've done one with Hervoyer from Geopolitics and Empire, previous guest
Yeah.
on my podcast and stuff, and we have some mutuals and so forth. So that's kind of how I heard about you.
Yeah. So I've been on a few kind of different podcasts. I guess the the reason kind of most people know me is I started a podcast of my own in 2021, kind of as we were in the peak. kind of COVID madness, or I guess at that point it was more the vaccine madness, to be honest, more than anything. The actual COVID madness was still there, but this was during this real big kind of like vaccine push they were having in 2021, and I kind of just felt very passionately about that. I wanted to start talking out, and I felt like I was kind of connected to a lot of people who had interesting, ideas that were kind of, just had good takes on all of this stuff. So I wanted to start a podcast, a bit of a kind of grassroots freedom-based podcast, which I did, and started talking out. And then since then, I've kind of been on a bunch of other podcasts. But at that point, I'd actually already moved out to Mexico. I moved out in, I think it was in March of 2021. So that was really like off the back of almost, I would say it was almost a year really of like on and off lockdowns in the UK. It was just going on forever, and it felt like there was just no end in sight. And I was kind of looking around the world and saying, okay, well, where's free? Where is a place that I can really have freedom? I'd already done a lot of traveling, so it wasn't a big step for me to kind of go and live abroad. And Mexico really was head and shoulders above everywhere else, in my view, on just how much freedom was still available there. So I came out to Mexico, and really since I arrived, I realized, okay, this is a place that I want to stay for a longer period. So I did go back to the UK, and I actually started my podcast in the UK just during a trip back, which was kind of in late 2021, and returned to Mexico. And then I've been just basically living here permanently since then. And yeah, I've been on a few other podcasts, and like Havoy, he lives in Guadalajara, so it's quite close to where I am here, and he comes to PV every now and again. So we'll meet up and record an episode or whatever. So he's a great guy. And then I went on Mikkel's podcast as well, which I think he maybe found out about me from Havoy. And again, it's cool to kind of like connect with other people who are doing similar things, and especially freedom-minded people, which from my experience seems to be the bulk of people I meet in Mexico. Like especially a lot of the people here in PV, they seem to have come here for reasons of seeking freedom. So it's cool to kind of be a part of that community and to see it grow. Like, I'm not sure how long you've been here, Vance, but I'm sure that you've probably also like seen just how much it's evolved. Just even in that time, you see people come and move around, and you start developing networks around the country and kind of realizing, oh, I know this person here and this person here, and it's really nice to have that.
Mm-hmm. So how would you describe the expat community in Puerto Vallarta? It's known for having a lot of retirees, but what's going on with like the younger crowd or the tech crowd, crypto crowd?
To be honest, I don't think it's that strong in that area. There's definitely a crowd for freedom, but like you said, it does tend to be a bit of an older crowd here. Yeah, that's one of my complaints about it, to be honest with you. Like, that's one of the things to be honest, like the main reason for leaving is honestly the climate, the weather aspect, just having extremely hot summers, particularly, that are a bit painful. But that is another aspect of it, is that a lot of the younger people, they tend to come and go. So you'll get people who come, especially in the winter period, you'll get people who come in, December, and they'll leave in February or March, and they'll just come for that period and hang out and do beach stuff. But in terms of the kind of more entrepreneurial aspects of things, like the tech scene and stuff like that, it's not very strong here. And that's definitely something which that is one of the reasons why I think I don't see a long-term future in PV. I actually started, my friend Andrew Howard, I'm not sure if you've spoken to him before, Vance, but he'd be a good person to speak to. He's another
Yeah, we have a podcast scheduled for later today.
No way, really?
Yeah.
Oh, that's amazing.
Yeah.
He's a great guy. He actually was here, and he started a kind of Bitcoin community, which I've kind of continued. But to be honest, it's not very strong. Even the Bitcoin community has been quite hard to really get it going here, or to see kind of much traction there. I mean, the Bitcoin community did already exist, and there's a few people around, but it's nowhere near as strong as other areas of Mexico. So that is one of the drawbacks, I think, of Vallarta. But on the plus side, you've got really good. I mean, it's really safe for a start. I mean, during the winter, it is great. Obviously during the winter months, the climate's good. You've got a lot of great beaches nearby. You can do trips all over. You've got places like Sayulita and San Pancho to the north.
Mhm.
I can't remember what the name of the place. I always forget the names of the places down south. I've not actually been to too many of them, but you've got a place called Yalapa. I'm not sure if you've been there, Vance, or if you've heard of it, but it's really, really beautiful place. You can get a boat there. You can only access it by boat or by doing a big hike. There's no road access, but you can go there as a beautiful beach and a lot of places to stay. But it's just like a little kind of jungle getaway. It's absolutely awesome. So there's a lot of really great places nearby. But yeah, in terms of your original question, like the tech scene and stuff like that, and the kind of young digital nomad scene, etc., there's not too much to speak of there.
Yeah, well, there's definitely more in Vallarta than Mazatlan, I would assume, which are kind of like the two big beach towns on the west coast.
Hmm.
But
Yeah, yeah.
personally, I like Mazatlan a lot. Have you checked it out?
Haven't yet. I actually had a friend who was living there though as well. Another person I'm not sure if you've spoken to, Joel Rafidi. He recently moved from Australia last year. He's also got a podcast. He moved to Mazatlan.
No.
I'm not sure he
Is
stayed
he
there
on
actually in the
Twitter?
end.
Joel Rafidi, is he on Twitter?
Joel Rafidi, yeah, just his name. He moved from. He's got a cool story because he actually went through a lot of court cases because he refused to pay a fine because he was on the beach having a picnic with his family and the government tried to fine him for it in Australia. And he fought all of the fines that he got and ended up winning against the government. He literally went to court and everything, represented himself, which is really cool. And then he left after that. He was like, okay, I won the case and now I'm leaving the country. So that he'd be a cool guy to talk to as well. He was in
Okay, I'm
Mazatlan and
DMing him right now.
yeah, you should. I'll yeah, if you need, I can hook you up as well. But yeah, he was in Mazatlan. So I was actually gonna try and make my way over at some point, just because he seemed to like the place. So, but no, I haven't been in the end. It's still somewhere on my list, to be honest. But the thing is with Mazatlan, I imagine that the climate is going to be pretty similar to here anyway. So I don't think that it probably would be a big enough kind of
Yeah.
improvement on the
It's a little
drawbacks that
less
I've found here.
jungly and a little bit drier. That's what I would
Right. Okay.
say.
Well, that's good because then you don't have the same humidity, I
Yeah, it's less
guess.
humid. It's less humid. It's more dry.
Yeah. Well, that's good because actually, I went to. Have you been to Baja California?
Yep.
Yeah, I thought that was the actual climate there was really nice because even when it gets really hot, it's just not got that humidity. The problem here is just that it's so humid. You're just covered in sweat as soon as you go out in the middle of like in the summer. Especially me because I ride a bike everywhere. I cycle,
That's
and
awesome.
cycling in the summer, it's like you've got to, if I want to go, I work in a co-work most days, and if I want to go there, it's like if I don't leave before like kind of 8:15, 8:30 in the morning, I'm I'm covered in sweat by the time I get there. So I've got to get out pretty early. Um, so yeah, if it's an improvement on that, then that's great. But I don't know too much about Mazatlan, to be honest.
What's it like biking in Vallarta? I know there's like the Malecon, the boardwalk there, but overall, have you like I'm a big biker too. How have you found biking in Mexico?
I think it's great. Actually, here it's really good. You've got a cycle lane that they've done a lot of improvement on recently as well. So it goes um, right from where I am in like Versailles kind of area. There's a cycle lane that basically goes all the way into the center, and it actually goes. I think it continues into Zona Romantica a little bit. So yeah, it's really good. I mean, you you can almost stay on the cycle lane the whole way. I mean, I don't because there's a quicker route just to take a road for maybe like 5 to 10 minutes, which doesn't have a cycle lane. But in general, I think it's good. I know that some people don't like cycling here, especially because people, I mean, I'm not sure what your opinion is on this, but people can be like pretty crazy drivers here. And I think it
Hmm.
depends because like some states, they don't even require, like if you want a driving license, you literally go into an office and pay some money and they give you a driver's license. Like, there's no test or anything, I think, in some states. So you never quite know the driving capabilities of people. So I think a lot of people don't like cycling or using a motorbike or whatever, but just because, if you have a bad driver that decides to, turn into you or whatever, like you could be pretty screwed. So, but personally for me, I just stay vigilant and it works pretty well. Yeah, I enjoy it. I think it's pretty good. Here it's like relatively flat as well. There's no like big hills and stuff like that. So yeah, it's all good.
Cool, cool. Bring me through a little bit more of your backstory. Were you in the UK up until escaping to Mexico? And I guess what's your kind of like technical or crypto or career background?
Yeah, so I was in the UK. Actually, I wasn't completely in the UK until I left. I actually left the UK in 2018,
Hmm.
and I lived in Portugal for a little while. I lived in Portugal for about 3 months, and then I went to I went traveling to Asia and Australia. So I did about maybe 8 or 9 months in Asia, I think, and then I went to Australia and lived there for a little while. So I was actually in Australia when all this kicked off, and at that point, I was kind of trying out some different stuff. I'd left. My background is in kind of editing, and I was actually working as a developer at that point in Australia. I was kind of having a bit of a career change. COVID hit, Australia went pretty crazy, and I went back to the UK and carried on working and just kind of freelancing there, doing various jobs. But there was always a view to leave, and actually, my plan before COVID hit was I was going to go to Canada. I really wanted to go to Canada. I had like friends who had been there, and it just seemed like a cool place to live. It's quite easy to go and do the year abroad or whatever, like the kind of working holiday thing. But then when I
Hmm.
saw what Canada did during COVID, I was just like, I can't do this. Like, I can't go to Canada. Like, I've seen too much. It's What's the point in going from one country, from one form of tyranny to another form of tyranny? I know it's a beautiful country, etc., but like, you have to take that into account. You have to. Unfortunately, we're going through times where you have to take into account the political situation because, like, you don't want to move to a country that is. I mean, like some of the stuff that Canada's talking about now about doing like price controls on food and stuff. It's like the red flags are all there. It's like, so the red
Yeah.
flags were there for me 100%. So I decided to just find somewhere that's free. Act on my convictions really, and say no. I know it would be easier to move somewhere that's I speak the language and somewhere that's a kind of more of a Western country and somewhere I've got family and friends, etc. But I thought, well, no, Mexico is the freest country in the world. If I'm going to make a change, if I'm going to really like make a change going forward into the future, let's make a big one. So yeah, I ended up choosing Mexico. But in terms of like career and stuff, I'm still like working remotely. I work in Bitcoin, and now I have like a couple of clients in the Bitcoin world, kind of doing mainly kind of media related stuff for them. And obviously that it actually worked out better for me, to be honest, because my clients are in Canada, and for me being here in Mexico, I'm in the same time zone pretty much, or roughly. I'm at the moment it's 2 hours difference, and it will, when the clocks change, it'll be 1 hour difference because obviously Mexico doesn't change its clocks now, which is a good thing. So it works out better. I probably wouldn't be able to, or maybe I could have done this job in the UK, but I might not have thought to do it. I might have thought it would just be like prohibitively difficult because of the time zone difference. But here I can do it, and obviously your money goes further. So like living in Mexico and earning Canadian dollars essentially, or earning Bitcoin, it's like a great situation.
And when you say you work in crypto or work in Bitcoin, what do you do exactly?
So I work in basically as doing like media related stuff. So it's mostly anything to do with kind of content creation. And I also do kind of podcast related work for a couple of pretty big Bitcoin podcasts, as well as all of their kind of social media strategy and things like that. So it's mainly doing kind of like producing and everything related. At the moment, it's still scaling up. So I started kind of with one client, and it's kind of grown from there. So I'm still like figuring it out at the moment, but it's turned into something which was basically a kind of one man freelancing job to kind of like scaling it up more into a business. And at the moment, that's two clients, but maybe I'll try and do more work, either staying in Bitcoin or potentially for other content creators and other podcasts. Because I guess like with doing my own podcast, I had the skill set there anyway. I just needed to kind of pair that with some of the stuff that I've been doing before. Like now that once I kind of became more skilled in podcasting specifically, it kind of opened new doors for me. And I was always keen to work in Bitcoin as well. Like, that was always something that I really wanted to do. Like I, it's kind of like my key passion, and also with kind of like moving countries and going to a new place and all the rest of it. I thought, well, you know, let's have a change of like lifestyle as well. Like let's change the career thing. Let's try and align everything. If I'm going to align the place that I'm living with, who I am and what my values are, I think that like also aligning your work with who you are can just, um, I think it just lining all of that up and having everything more congruent is always a good thing. So I was quite keen to try and work in Bitcoin. So I was looking for Bitcoin jobs, and then once I got into that world, you find that kind of doors open up because people know people, etc., and things can kind of move on from there. So yeah, now it's great because I'm living somewhere that's free. I'm contributing to an industry that supports like freedom and that is all about self sovereignty and stuff. So I really feel like I've kind of paired that value of mine with my actions in the world as well.
This episode of the My Latin Life podcast is brought to you by Language Blend, the new best way to learn Spanish. Language Blend focuses on what you actually need to live and get by abroad. With daily one-on-one lessons, a dedicated texting partner, it's like living in a Spanish-speaking country without ever leaving home. Go to languageblend.com for more information. Totally. And so would you say that the editing was the skill that kind of got you in? Because it's definitely good to just emphasize that if you want to work online, it's good to have a skill. you know?
Yeah. Yeah, it definitely is. I mean, I would say because I used to work, like my background actually is in advertising. Like that's where I kind of worked for. I was in London working for about 8 years in the advertising industry, and but I was editing, but I was kind of I was going into agencies and editing, etc. So I was doing the whole like agency life, and it's good. I learned a lot. It treated me well, but it was never really aligned with my values. I always felt like I was a bit of a kind of sore thumb in that industry. I always thought a lot of the stuff that we were doing was just kind of, it was just a bit stupid, and I just thought like, what are we doing here? Like a lot of the creative that I was working on, I was just kind of like, what is this? So for me, if I was working on a project that I really cared about, like I had a few clients and I thought, this is awesome. It's a really great client. I care about what they're doing. Like we're doing nice work for them. But it was the exception rather than the rule. So for me, I always kind of thought if I compare my skill set, but just work in an industry that I really care about, work in an industry that I genuinely believe in, like that's something that I would like to do. Even if I'm not necessarily working on stuff that's like really, quote unquote sexy or whatever, like some of these like really sexy commercials or whatever. But if it's for something that I don't ultimately care about or believe in, then it doesn't mean as much to me. I'd rather be doing work which isn't necessarily sexy, but actually is in an industry that I really care about and that has a mission that I care about. So yeah, like initially editing was the thing that I kind of grew from. I was first of all primarily doing editing, but then it's kind of grown from there into like producing, researching, and now I've kind of got kind of like a small, just like ad hoc team of freelancers who I work with. So I'm actually doing less editing now. I'm actually outsourcing some of that now and just kind of like managing the actual clients and figuring out kind of like what needs doing and trying to kind of like grow the output basically. And so yeah, it's kind of like moved on. But just to go back to like what you were saying in terms of having like skills that you can do remotely, I definitely think that this is like something that everyone should work on, especially if you want to live abroad and stuff, you want to try and work online. Because I've had people who come to me and they say, oh well, like what's it like in Mexico? How is it like? Can I get a job there? Can I do this? And my answer is always like, well, you should try to figure out a way to make money online. And I don't think it's that hard. Like it might be hard in the West, it might be hard if you're living in Canada or Australia or the UK or whatever, because you think, okay, well, how much do I have to make online to actually be able to make ends meet? Things are expensive. Like I've got bills to pay, etc. But if you live somewhere that you've reduced your expenses by 75%, then you don't need to make as much. And in many countries, they don't tax foreign income. So if you can figure out a way to make income from your home country and live in a country that doesn't tax foreign income, well, now you've got rid of even more expenses. So the bar is much lower. So I think that for people who are looking for that freedom and saying like, look, I want to work online and make money and I want to have more of a freedom lifestyle, a lot of the time they think, okay, well, I've got to make the exact same amount of money I'm making here, but you might be able to make 30 grand less but actually still have the same amount of money in your pocket at the end of it because you've reduced the
Yep.
expenses significantly. So people often don't do that calculation properly because they don't take into consideration things like tax on foreign income, things like daily expenses. They just look at where they are now. So um, and I didn't, to be honest. Like I was willing to just earn a lot less. I was just like, okay, well, if I make a lot less, that's okay. I'll have a better lifestyle. But in the end, I've actually done better for myself, like by moving countries. And I think that's the case for a lot of people. They just don't necessarily see it. But yeah, like you said, the first thing is just to have something that you can do online. And I think there's loads. You just have to be creative about it. You have to kind of just believe in whatever skills that you've got are valuable. And I think a lot of people, they don't necessarily believe that they have like valuable skills, or sometimes maybe they don't recognize them. But if you actually kind of sit down and think, okay, well, what are the things that I do day in, day out? What is the thing that I could teach someone if they said, what's the thing I'm an expert in? And it might be kind of obscure, but there might be a niche for you there that you can do that online and make something out of it. So, yeah.
Yeah, totally. 100% agree. I'd love to let you keep riffing on this. We were talking offline about how we have a huge opportunity here with the newfound ability to work online and how it sort of coincides very nicely with the Western world crumbling.
Yeah. Well, exactly. I think that you can see it happening, can't you? It's I think that the West is so I don't want to say it. I don't want to say just like it's all over completely because I do kind of still hold out some hope. But I also just think that a lot of people they cling to something which isn't necessarily right for them. Like the third world, quote unquote. In developing countries. I mean, you'll know living in Mexico, if people in Argentina or people in some other place, if they don't feel like they're having the life that's right for them there, they'll move. They'll move and find a better lifestyle. But there seems to be some kind of thing in the West where it's like, oh well, if things aren't going well, I've got to stick out here because I'm not going to just abandon my country. I'm not going to abandon where I'm from. Like, we need to make things better. We need to fight for it or whatever. And the rest of the world doesn't think like that. And actually, I think that mentality doesn't, on aggregate, have good outcomes because if you're not willing to leave your country for, kind of greener pastures, well, what incentive does your country have to change? What incentives does the government have to change? I think that people moving around and saying, well, no, I am going to go somewhere. I'm going to go somewhere that I'm, have lower taxes. I'm going to go somewhere that, isn't doing like crazy, like teaching crazy gender ideology in schools or whatever the thing is that you find, that you don't like about your country. You can go somewhere else and try to live somewhere that doesn't do that. And over time, I think that has positive impacts on the world because countries will have to take account of that because at the moment that's just not the
Yeah.
case. It's like
Yeah, it'll
there's this
create more
hubris. I think,
competition.
yeah, and I think it was somewhere. It was someone in, I can't remember who it was. Was it the Californian governor or something? And he said something like, oh, where are you going to go? If people want to move out of California, like, where are you going to go? There was this kind of, you know, I guess like it's kind of hubris. It's like, oh well, like there's nowhere better than here, But actually, there's plenty of places better, and there's plenty of other places better, not even just in America, but around the world. So I just think that like, why not consider that as an option? Like I understand people have families and stuff and might not want to do it, but even if you have a family, like I mean, you've probably spoken to a few yourself, Vance, but like I've spoken to like loads of parents who have gone and taken their kids to another country, moved abroad, or have even traveled with kids and done homeschooling and stuff. Like there is lots of creative things that you can still do, and I don't think that's going to like have a negative impact on a kid. I think that a kid having that like experience of seeing the world and stuff might be like a really really positive thing for them, that they're getting a better education they even could have in a school kind of thing. So I think there's always an opportunity for everyone, but it just takes, maybe for some people it just takes less to kind of shift them into that mentality. Like for me, because I'd done a lot of traveling, I was already just like, okay, well, I'm not gonna wait until complete breaking point to leave. I'm just going to see the signs, going to see the writing on the wall and leave. Other people might need more of a push, but I think that people having their mind open to that, to go into a different place, is always a good thing, like personally and on a geopolitical level. I think it's going to make greater change as well.
Yeah, yeah, I definitely agree with that. I think British people have always had that sense of adventure.
Yeah, Maybe you're right. Maybe you're right. I mean, I'm not sure. I guess like we're probably more well traveled than some other people. I guess like probably. Where are you from, by the way, Vance? I don't know where you're from.
I'm Canadian or American.
Oh, okay, okay. Yeah, Canadians generally seem like pretty well traveled and stuff, but Americans, I don't see it quite as much. I mean, I see a lot of Americans like here in Mexico, but when I've traveled elsewhere in the world, not so much. But I guess like maybe Europeans, on general like travel a lot. But the thing with British though is that I still think that there's this idea that amongst a lot of British people, that it's like, oh well, we're still not that we're still like number one, but like that we have some kind of obligation to stay in our country. I don't feel like people feel that as much in like Central and South America. When I talk to people from Argentina or whatever who are living here, they don't seem to have any obligation like, oh, I need to stay in my country. It's like, well, I'll just go where I'm treated well. I'm going to go where I have a better quality of life, etc. I think that
Mhm.
exists more in developing countries than it does in the West. Do you think that this is always going to exist? This kind of, I guess, like, what did you call it? Geographic arbitrage or geopolitical arbitrage? What did you call it?
Geo arbitrage, yeah.
Geo arbitrage.
It's
Like, do
it's
you think
not
of
it's not
that?
about the politics. It's more about the like earn dollars, spend pesos, earn money in areas
Yeah, yeah,
of,
yeah,
of
yeah.
the economy. You know what I mean?
But do
Yeah.
you think that that will always exist? Because, or do you think that over time that I guess these extremes of, you can take, for instance, let's take the country you can earn the most money, somewhere like Switzerland, and earning like money from that country, working for that, and then living somewhere else, or going to another country where it's, like Vietnam, let's say, or one of the cheapest countries in the world. Do you
Hmm.
think that that will always exist, or do you think that now that people are working remotely, you can live in different places? Now that like everyone's having to compete online and on the internet, you can, the people in the West are having to compete against people in the East, etc. Do you think that that's going to flatten out so that these extremes, so that arbitrage opportunity won't be quite as strong? Like, because I think it will, but I'm interested to know your thoughts on that.
Yeah, I know there's that famous book. Is it called "The World Is Flat"? Something like that.
Oh, I don't know
Um,
it.
it's a famous book, and it kind of talks about this type of thing. I mean, I think it's going to take a long time to get there. So I think
Yeah.
we're in a really prime moment where there's still definitely going to be arbitrage opportunities for the next 10, 20, 30 years. I think one thing that might happen in the future is society kind of gets is that people are either going to be in one of two boxes. It's going to be people with location independence and people without location independence, and that's going to become just increasingly acute.
Right.
Um, in terms of, it's not like a have nots thing, because I think what's going to have to happen is um, people who don't have location independence are going to have to be compensated for that. So I
Mhm.
think in some way, and I think we're already starting to see that a little bit, like people who are willing to work construction in Canada or Australia or the US can make, six figures doing construction. And because, they're kind of getting compensated for not having location independence in a way. Um, among other things. And so I think that's going to become increasingly acute in the future, where there's always going to be some jobs that are, uh, involve being in a physical location. And then, of course, and an increasing percentage of jobs will be online or location independent. And there's going to be sort of like a give and take, or like an interesting dynamic between these two groups of people, because you're going to have some buddies that we can go to Tokyo for my birthday, and then you're going to have some buddies that don't have that luxury.
Yeah, that's interesting. So you think that that's already happening? That those people who are getting paid a lot for construction or mining or whatever, that kind of lack of location independence is already priced in, or you think that's something that's coming down the line?
I think it's starting to get priced in. It's obviously a combination of factors. It's, obviously we're compensating people for manual labor versus working in a cushy office. And that's kind of been what's mostly been priced in. But I think increasingly the lack of location independence is going to have to get priced in, because that's just, it's a market. It's a
Yeah,
supply and demand. And if you want people to stay put, you're going to have to compensate them.
But then I don't know, maybe there's some people who they actually just don't care for it anyway. So maybe the market won't demand additional pay because, I tend to think that people like you and me are the anomalies. We're not the rule. Like most people actually, they want to stay somewhere local, generally where their family is or whatever. So I'm not sure whether it's going to be necessary to to kind of like have to pay people more to not have the freedom of location independence. Although I guess you could argue, well, just by nature of them having to spend more in their home country, just by nature of the fact they can't live there without getting paid more, that in itself is a market factor as well.
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to speculate too much because we'll see how this shakes out. But yeah, I think it's going to be increasingly acute, and obviously, just the percentage of the population that can work online is going to continue to grow. I know there's obviously been a bit of a back to the office push right now, but I think that that's just a slight bump in the road on the
Yeah.
chart. And it's really just going to be like a stock market chart where obviously there's a little bit of up and down, but the long term trend is going to be higher and higher in terms of the percentage of the population that works online. And it's going to have
Yeah.
huge implications for the world in a lot of different ways. I think there's going to be an enormous migration away from cold areas and depressing areas towards warm, cheerful places, right? Like places like Vallarta have Puerto Vallarta, where you are now, have benefited from this tremendously because
Mhm.
previously the only people that could go there was like people receiving a pension or some sort of fixed income. But now the influx of digital nomads and stuff, it breathes new life into the place. And so you're seeing a huge um, uh, migration away from cold, depressing, boring places like, your Ohio's of the world and towards, sunny, fun places such as southern Spain or Vallarta.
Yeah, I totally agree. I mean, I do. My worry though is that with these things, normally it takes politics, at least like 10, 15, 20 years to catch up to the nature of like
Hmm.
how things are actually changing in the real economy. And I
Hmm.
think that at some point, I mean, it's already starting to happen. I think that at some point they will try to stop people leaving. I think these governments will realize that they're just completely fucked if people just start leaving in droves, and they'll try and find ways. And I think that will be done by things like carbon credits and saying, okay, well, you can't get on a plane, you can't go and fly. If you do, then you're going to max out your carbon limits, and then you're going to have some global digital ID which says, okay, sorry, you've had this many air miles, so you can't fly again until next year, etc.
Hmm.
They could do something like that, or they could just try to do things like global taxation. They could try and do things like, for instance, I think America already do this, where they say, like, if you're an American citizen, you have to pay some degree of taxes here. You can't without renouncing your citizenship. uh, you still have to pay some taxes. I think more countries will probably start doing things like that, because
Yep.
otherwise, what are they going to do? I mean, are they? These countries are going bankrupt, and people do irrational, not just irrational. It's actually rational. You could argue. I mean, it's terrible and it's tyrannical, but it's still rational. They'll do things like that when they realize that they're going to go broke. And I think that these countries are going to. They're probably looking already at saying, how do we deal with this problem of people going and living elsewhere, earning money online, and living in a cheaper country. I don't know. What do you think? You think that something's gonna change, like politically, to try to stop this movement?
Hey guys, quick interruption to tell you about Bitrefill. Bitrefill is the best way to convert your crypto into gift card balances. These are gift cards that you can spend at hotels.com, Airbnb, Nike, and many more. You may remember Joel Valenzuela, previous podcast guest. He's been living on crypto exclusively since 2015, and he's a big consumer of Bitrefill. And so I asked Joel, I said, what do you like most about Bitrefill? He said that he likes the instant delivery, the precise amount so that you don't have to juggle a lot of gift cards, and he loves the global selection. Nobody else has this much selection of gift cards, over 10,000 gift card options across hundreds of countries. Go to bitrefill.com to sign up, and you can also use the code MyLatinLife for 10% back off your first purchase. Go to bitrefill.com for more information. Yeah, I mean, every indebted nation doesn't want to lose their taxpayers, right?
Yeah.
And so we saw that this year with Australia. They started implementing sort of a form of light global taxation or citizenship based taxation.
Oh, did they?
Yeah, they like a light form of it, and I think it'll be kind of gradual. It's not going to be like 0 to 100. They're like, I don't think countries are going to immediately say, "Okay, we're doing the U.S. model," like starting next year. I think it'll be a slightly gradual. I think they'll start. It'll be like a slow creep where it'll be like, oh, we're going to be global taxation or citizenship based taxation for inheritance tax or citizenship based taxation for your capital
Yeah.
gains or
Yeah.
something like that. So it won't be like, so it'll be sort of gradual, I think. But yeah, dude, these indebted nations, they want to, like their biggest fear is losing their taxpayers.
Yeah, I mean it's wild because they do have that, but at the same time they keep making it worse and worse and worse. I mean, like honestly, it's just some of the stuff that's happened in the UK. It's a complete clown nation. Honestly, like just some of the things that have happened, I just think,
Hmm.
what is going on? Like they've completely lost the plot. I mean, Canada, I would argue, is like even worse. Some of the stuff I've seen coming out of Canada, but these countries don't seem to recognize that like people want freedom. You know, people actually do want freedom. That's even people who might not necessarily like say that, and they might support. You know, they might be like relatively progressive in this way or the other. Like I honestly think that deep down, everyone like wants freedom and doesn't want rules for everything because life just gets worse when you have rules for everything. You know what I mean? Like out
Hmm.
here in Mexico, that it's basically just like an unwritten rule that it's just like as long as you're not kind of like, you know, treading on someone else's toes, as long as you're not like really impacting on someone else what they want to do, you can kind of do what you want and people just kind of accept it. And you know, it's just a different life. And I found that in a lot of like more developing countries, it's still they still have that kind of like thirst for life and that kind of um I guess this kind of vivaciousness, you know, and that seems to have been lost in the West. Like we think, oh yeah, you know, we're so like progressive that we're gonna like make a rule about this and a rule about that because you know we're gonna just like uh, we're gonna be the most progressive country. But it's progressive in you know inverted commas, and it's not real progressiveness because actually I think that I feel somewhat stifled in the West. I mean, the UK isn't even as bad as some other countries, but like it just feels stifling. I just kind of think just let people like live their lives and let people have freedom, and maybe they will want to stick around. The places that are really good in the UK. I mean, I actually quite like London as a city, but it actually feels much more. It doesn't feel particularly stifling. There's some areas where it's like quite chaotic, and the chaotic places, you know, I'm thinking places like you know Camden Town and things like that in London. It's fun. It's fun and it's chaotic, and you know it's just a bit like it's kind of messy, but you have that all over Latin America and you have that, you know, like in Central America and Asia and things like that. And for me, that feels like real life. And I think that the more that the West kind of moves in this direction of saying, no, we're going to sanitize everything. I mean, the UK recently, they're like, I think this has happened in Australia as well. The UK is doing it. It's like they're banning smoking. And it's like, I don't like, why just let people do if people want to smoke let people smoke as long as they're you know okay I'm not saying that you shouldn't have rules about like smoking in a car with a child or something like that then fine but it just seems like anything the government says okay well this is unhealthy like where does that end like are we going to ban sugar are you going to ban alcohol I actually think
Hmm.
on a long enough time frame all of these things are going to happen unless there's some change where people actually say you know what like we actually care about having being able to make choices in our own lives unless there's this big cultural change it's going to continue along this path until one day people just wake up and go, I'm not allowed to do anything. I'm not allowed to have any fun. I'm not allowed to do anything that I want to do. The government has prescribed my entire life because they want to try and avoid danger and avoid risk. And that just doesn't, that mentality doesn't exist in these more developing countries. And I think that it will always fail. It will always collapse into itself. So I think if these countries really want to keep their tax base, rather than saying, hey, we're going to start doing global taxation and this, that, and the other, well, people will just renounce because actually people want freedom. So the best thing that these countries can do if they really want to keep their tax base is have some level of freedom and personal responsibility in their own countries and allow people to just make decisions for themselves and
Hmm.
feel unstifled. I mean, that would be my advice, but it's just I don't see it happening.
No, I totally agree. I mean, in the UK, if you're driving and you speed or you run a red light, the ticket's automatic. They got
Yeah.
the camera, they charge your credit card immediately, and it's just like a taste of things to come.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. There's a lot of that going on. I think that it's a mentality, and I don't think it's even just necessarily the government. I think the people have the mentality as well, and that's why I just wish that more people actually travelled and could experience other parts of the world. Like go and see what life is like in other places, rather than kind of just thinking, oh well, it must be so dangerous here, and I got to be so scared of that. Like go and experience life in those places and see if you like it, see if you feel see if you feel kind of more like elevated in yourself, see if you feel happier, etc., etc. And I think a lot of people might. So yeah, I think that I'm very bullish on developing countries generally, but especially the ones that support freedom. I know that there's, well, I don't know actually. I'm not sure I could name the ones which don't. I generally, the correlation to me almost seems like the more a country is on the developing end of the spectrum, the more free it seems to be. But I'm sure that there are exceptions to that. I mean, you could probably say something like China would be an exception, maybe a couple of other countries in that region, but yeah, generally, like developing countries, they're more free. I feel kind of I've always felt more happy and alive. When I've been traveling, I wonder when I used to travel, like, is this feeling that I have when I'm traveling? Is this just a feeling that I should accept as a temporary thing? Like I come to this place and it's just okay. I experience it for a couple of weeks or a couple of months, and then I go home. And then I kind of realized, well, no, like if that's how I feel, like there's something about that place which makes me feel that way. And ultimately, the thing I think it is just having more personal freedom. Like, I think that is something which we should be shooting for.
Definitely. Yeah, I mean, every place is fun for 2 weeks, but
Mhm.
you've now been in Mexico for 2 years. So how does it feel being a long-term Mexican resident? Do you have residency in Mexico?
Yeah, yeah,
Awesome.
yeah. It feels great. It feels awesome. I mean, and I feel like especially this year, I feel like the first probably maybe year and a half, I was a little kind of lax when it came to things like learning the language and stuff. But this year, I've really kind of gone. I've properly stuck to it and kind of come a lot further in my language learning and stuff. So that helps a lot as well. It's just actually being able to like speak the language conversationally and stuff. And that's kind of was always a goal of mine, was to become fluent in a foreign language. I never thought
Hmm.
it would be Spanish actually, but like now I can kind of see that goal in sight. Like I'm not fluent now, but I can see that maybe in the next year to 2 years that could actually be something that I could realistically achieve, is complete fluency. And so that's cool. Like I feel like the more time you spend somewhere, and it's just I don't know, man. Like for me, I just respect Mexico as a country. I really, when I was leaving the UK, like it was hard enough for me to get out of the country. Like even getting out of the country, I didn't know whether I was going to be able to leave. I didn't know whether they were going to ask me for a test and stuff. When I came back to the UK the first time after visiting Mexico, um, it was like I had to take like a COVID test and stuff. And at one point, I was like changing my flights around because they were saying, well, if you come from Mexico, it's on this thing called a red list, and you're going to have to spend like three
Right.
weeks in a hotel in the UK at your own expense for like 2 grand a week or something, and all this nonsense. And when I came to Mexico, I wasn't even a resident here. I wasn't a citizen. I literally came as a tourist to Mexico, and all I had to do was sign a form and say I do not have COVID, right, and just tick a box. And I walked off a plane, and they gave me 6 months on my passport and said welcome to Mexico. Now, like, how can you not respect that? Like for me, like I'm being treated far better by a country that has absolutely no obligations towards me compared to my own country. And I go back to my own country and I'm treated like some kind of a walking biohazard. So I just think that like it's experiences like that, you can ignore them and just think, oh well, this is just silly, and kind of roll your eyes at it. Or you can really take that as a sign and go, there's something wrong here. And like, am I going to go where I'm treated best, or am I going to just be treated like dirt by my own country? Like, okay, I'd love to see the UK do well, but I'm not gonna just stay somewhere that basically like tyrannizes me when I have options in the world. So yeah, I respect Mexico. I think it's a great country. I'm always kind of singing its praises and stuff. I think it's got a huge future. I just hope it stays on this path, because obviously things can change quite quickly. I mean, when the politics changes here, I've been told, obviously I don't have experience of this firsthand, but I've been told when politics changes, it changes very quick. Like you can have a change of government and all of a sudden everything is different. um, it can swing from one end to the other. So hopefully things kind of like stay as they are. Because at the moment, you can move here quite easily as a foreigner. You can live here quite easily. It's relatively relaxed when it comes to like residencies and things like that. So hopefully it stays there. But if it does, I see a really really good things for Mexico, probably other parts of Central America as well and South America. But I haven't really ventured much into those areas yet. But I just think developing countries, but especially Mexico, I see a really bright future.
That's awesome. So what does your internationalization strategy look like in general? So you got the Mexican residency, you got the UK passport. You said that your parents were actually born in other countries, maybe? Like, are you
Uh,
looking to do other residencies, other passports?
yeah, they weren't born in other countries. They were just born in different parts of the UK than where I
Okay,
was. So that my
gotcha.
parents are still English. Yeah, I at the moment my because I have my temporary residency, and at the moment I'm just hoping to get that permanent residency, which I can't apply for it yet. It's not going to be for another like 2 to 3 years now. I think probably 3 years.
Hmm.
So hopefully, I'm just hoping things don't change before that. But once that happens, it'll be like permanent residency situation. And yeah, I mean that's all for now. I mean, I haven't really made like too many other plans in terms of getting like multiple passports and stuff. And I just haven't really looked into it. There's nowhere else at the moment that I'm really keen on living, but maybe that will happen at some point. Um, yeah. What about you? What's your strategy in that area? I imagine you've thought about it much more than I have.
Yeah, I mean, I'd like to be a Mexican citizen one day. I think that would be cool. And my question for you would be, so you said you're going to Europe, doing a little bit of a Europe tour. Are you potentially considering some of the freer parts of Europe now as a base, or are you just doing like a little bit of a rip for wedding season and then coming back to Mexico?
Yeah, that's it. Really, it's not. I mean, I do plan because I mean I'm going back with my girlfriend who is Mexican, so I want her to see some things that she won't have ever seen before. So I guess my thoughts are, well, we're going back for the winter. Obviously, it would be great to go back for the summer and for her to experience the like the European summer. But since we're there in the winter, we might as well
Yeah.
kind of go all in on the winter
She's
vibes.
gonna
So
know the real deal.
exactly, yeah. So she's gonna know like what it's genuinely like to be cold. She's never seen snow before. Like I'm planning on taking her snowboarding and stuff as well if we can fit that in. So just gonna try and like for her show her like what the European winter is like really. But in terms of like going to the free, I don't know what those free countries are to be honest, man. Like I guess like more Eastern European countries possibly, but at the moment, I mean, in the winter they're not as easy to visit. I think if I was going in the summer, I'd probably be saying, yeah, great, let's go to like Bulgaria and things like that. We might visit Poland, but aside from that, it will probably be Spain, UK, maybe France. Possibly Sweden or something. So yeah, I wouldn't say it's going to be like the freedom oriented countries, but I'm not even sure what they are anymore. I mean,
Mhm.
you could probably
Portugal,
count them
you're
on one
bearish on
hand.
Portugal. You're done with Portugal.
Yeah, I would quite like to go back to Portugal. I do think that Portugal is a good shout. Portugal is probably a rare country that's not in Eastern Europe that still has some level of freedom. So would be cool to visit there. I'm not sure whether we'll go this winter. Um, Probably save it until going there in the summer at some point. But yeah, Portugal is a great country. I really liked. When I lived there, I really really enjoyed it. I lived in Lisbon for 3 months and it was awesome. So
Hmm. But do you think Portugal was part of the reason you left, that they were talking about implementing crypto stuff? Like, by the way, do you get paid in crypto, or a mix of crypto and fiat, or?
yeah, I have the choice basically. I have the choice, so it's the option is there. Um, Put it that way. I don't want to say too much about the nature of it, but yeah, it's working for Bitcoin companies. Normally, there is the option to. It's not always the case, but normally there is the option. And I mean, because you know, for me, basically I'm, a UK. I only have citizenship in the UK. I have uh, like my banks are generally like UK based, but I'm working for Canadian companies, for Bitcoin companies. So it's all a bit of a mix to be honest. But no, when I was in Portugal, the reason I was there was not for that. I actually was I was training there I was doing like a boot camp, like a coding boot camp to learn to be a developer.
Oh,
That's
cool.
what I was kind of in Portugal for. So it was always going to be for 3 months. That was basically like the time I was going to be there. But yeah, it was great. I mean, I love the country. The reason when I actually did this boot camp, the plan, I didn't really have particularly firm plans afterwards, but I decided during that time, because kind of left London, I'd left my job, I'd left. I say left my job. I mean, I was freelancing, and I kind of said to my clients like, I'm going away indefinitely. I'd broken up with a girlfriend that I've been kind of living with and things like that. So I kind of had this clean slate for the first time in a long time when I was in Portugal, and there was always the option that, oh, okay, well, I can just go back to the UK, go back and live in London, etc. But I just made the decision like, okay, I've severed so many of these ties, so many of these kind of things that were tying me to the UK and that were tying me to London. Um, why stay there? Like why go back? Why just kind of go and try to um, continue my life there when I can do anything now? So initially I went to Japan and went snowboarding in Japan because it was something I'd always wanted to do, and then I just stayed in Asia, and I really loved it there. I Have you done much traveling in Asia, Vance?
No.
No, no, no. I mean, I really love Asia as well. I think Asia's absolutely awesome. I don't see it as much of an option for living, or probably just not such a strong option for living, just because it is, first of all, very culturally different. The language are very, very difficult to learn, etc. It's also kind of, these countries are very close to like China and stuff, and I'm just not sure whether they really have a culture of freedom in the same way that kind of Latin America does. But I do think it's a great place, and I had an absolute blast there and stuff. So yeah, it was after living in Portugal for a while. That was when I just said, hey, like I'm just going to go and like just go where the wind takes me, kind of thing, and just explore some different things. It was when I'd done bits of traveling before for maybe up to about 6 weeks at a time, but at this point I kind of went away, and I didn't return to the UK probably for like a year and a half. And that was when I just kind of realized that this could be a lifestyle. The doors opened up to me in terms of being like, okay, like this is something that I could potentially do. I think you learn a lot doing that kind of thing. And if it wasn't for that experience, I don't think I would be here living in Mexico now.
Do you think you could ever live in the UK again, or have you just been fully converted by the LATAM pill, the freedom pill?
I don't see it. I don't see it, but I would never say never, because I do think that a lot of people, you have to kind of observe a lot of people, they do kind of live abroad for a while, and then they eventually go back to their home country for whatever reason. But I think that the difference for me is like I don't have any younger relatives, for instance, in the UK. Like my relatives are all older. So, and my brother, he lives in Canada. He doesn't live in the UK either. So there's not really any there won't be really any like family reasons to stay. It's not like it's a lot easier, I think, to kind of make a new life. So I don't see the reason for going back. However, I would never say never, because just for instance, when I first came to PV, I never thought, I was like, this is the place I want to stay. This is awesome. Like, I love it. I don't want to leave here. And then after kind of living for a couple of years, like, the summers are really, really hot and stuff. So I don't think you necessarily know how you're going to feel on you might know how you're going to feel like on a year to year basis, but it's difficult to predict how you're going to feel 10 or 20 or 30 years. Maybe at some point you say, oh, you know what, I want that familiarity again. But I don't see it personally. I don't see it. I don't know whether Mexico will be the place I'll always stay, but I don't think I will go back and live in the UK, honestly. But yeah, I always reserve the possibility that I will have a change of heart at some point. But yeah.
El Salvador.
Well, I've been to El Salvador, and honestly, for me, like, I don't understand why. I say I don't understand. Like, I understand why Bitcoiners want to go and live there, and why a lot of people are saying, "Okay, no, I'm going to go and help build this Bitcoin economy and stuff." And I respect it. I respect the hustle there. But I don't know if you visited it, Vance, but like, I just found it kind of boring. Like, it's not got particularly great beaches. I didn't get the same. I don't know. I just didn't feel like it was a particularly enjoyable place to be. It was just a bit. It was just felt very average to me. So if I'm gonna kind of change my life, which I have done, like in a significant way, and move to a different country, I want to move somewhere that's really got like great vibes that I kind of can enjoy and appreciate every day. And I did kind of feel like with El Salvador, it's totally different. It's so much more not just of a developing country, but just even kind of culturally, it's very different to Mexico. I don't feel like it has the same beauty or the same things that you can do and the same opportunities. So, like, I don't know. I respect those people going over there and because of the Bitcoin thing. But for me, I think that Mexico is probably going to do way more. I think that every country is going to be Bitcoinized at some point anyway. So I think I like
Really?
going and yeah, I think it's going to happen because these fiat currencies are not going to last. So every country is going to basically have to either become irrelevant or they're going to have to, in some way, become Bitcoinized. Like I just don't see any other way for it going. I mean, are they all going to go back to the gold standard? I don't see it. So I think that, and especially now that you've got some countries which are becoming Bitcoinized, like El Salvador, that just pushes everything in that direction. I think that that's gonna be the standard. I mean, when we see this next bull run, you're going to see like huge riches come into places like El Salvador, and other countries are going to say, well, we've got to do that. How are we going to compete if not? So for me, moving to El Salvador now and being, maybe 5 or 10 years early to something which is probably going to be inevitable across the globe, it's not worth it. I'd rather just live in the place that's really awesome anyway, that's going to be even more awesome when Bitcoin comes down the line.
That's fascinating.
Have you
Tell me
visited there?
more. I have not. I have not because I mean, it only got cool like a year and a half ago. So
Yeah,
I
exactly.
gotta,
Yeah. I
I
mean, I know
gotta.
that like surfers like it and stuff because it's got good surfing. I'm not a surfer personally, so like I don't really care too much about that. But I didn't see a good beach the whole time I was there. Maybe I, should have gone to more places around the country. I was only there, I think I was there for about a week and a half or 2 weeks. So maybe I should have spent more time. But there you go.
And you've definitely carved out your niche in the crypto community. Is crypto always going to be so dispersed, or like I know there are a bit of hubs in Lisbon and maybe Dubai and a couple places, maybe the Bay Area, um, El Salvador, obviously. What are you seeing in terms of development of communities around crypto? Like, could you give me like a bird's eye and I guess with a specific view on Latin America? Like, do you see communities forming? Do you see important people basing up in particular places? Or if someone wants to get close to the action, is
Mhm.
that possible to do?
Yeah, the way that I see it happening, honestly, is just by small scale projects. I think that after what happened in El Salvador with Bitcoin Beach and everything happening in El Zonte, I think a lot of places said, "Hey, like let's try and emulate that. Let's try to have a circular economy and things like this." And so I think it was awesome. It was awesome what's happened there, even though I'm a bit bearish on El Salvador generally, just like you know, as a country that I might want to live in. But I actually think that what El Sante's done is amazing and it's like hugely inspiring. But yeah, over here in Mexico, like what I like is that there's this kind of competition evolving now. I mean, I know that Andrew Howard's going to be saying this when he speaks to you, just like what he's doing over there and like San Miguel, and I think he's living in Querétaro, but he's doing this the Bitcoin stuff. It's mainly focused in San Miguel, but he's doing some really cool stuff over there, and it's this kind of like competitiveness. It's like people are kind of really like putting their flag in the ground and saying this is going to be a Bitcoin place, and I'm going to try to make it happen. Now, I think that so far it's been a community effort. People have been saying, "No, I care about Bitcoin. I'm going to try and get people excited about it." But I think that as time goes on, it's just going to happen like as a natural economic um, thing. I just think that people are going to say, there's going to be more Bitcoiners who hold more wealth. Like they don't want to go and sell their Bitcoin exchanges. They don't want a taxable event like that. They'd rather just spend it. Um, and then there's other people who they'll want to keep it because maybe they want to avoid taxation themselves. Maybe they just want the dark money. I mean, as governments become more bankrupt, maybe they'll go, ridiculous on taxation, and people say, well, I want to accept money, but I want to take the cash or I want to take, Bitcoin because if I put this through the banking system, I've got to pay all of this tax on it, and I can't afford it. I mean, I'm not advocating for it. I'm not saying they should or shouldn't do that, but I'm just saying like naturally that's what happens. I mean, even in the UK or something, like if you're like the tradies, the people who are like plumbers and electricians and stuff, they all want cash. They all want cash because they don't have to run it through the books. Like, let's not beat around the bush and pretend it doesn't happen. So as we're moving into more of a digital economy, I think that Bitcoin is going to be a very strong option for that kind of thing, because it's going to be like way quicker and easier than even taking cash. Like you can just pay someone in Bitcoin. So I think the more people are going to accept it, because it makes economic sense for them. More people are going to want to spend it because they have a lot of their savings in Bitcoin, and also they just want to use it. I mean, I always try and use it. If a business here accepts Bitcoin, I'm paying in Bitcoin. Like, I'll just buy the Bitcoin back again afterwards. It's just because I want to support it. I want to support. I want to support the economy essentially. So some people will do it as a hobby thing, but I think more and more it's just going to become an economic decision. And so I think all these factors are going to play into it: the competitive aspect, the economic aspect on the receiver part, the economic aspect on the spender part. I think it's all just going to keep compiling. Like, in my opinion, it's just an unstoppable train. It's going to keep on going, and that's why I think I'm not in a rush to move somewhere like El Salvador and say I want to get in on this Bitcoin economy, because the Bitcoin economy it's just going to keep going anyway in whichever country you are, even in legacy countries like Canada and England and France or whatever. They're still going to have it as well. They're still going to have this rush. It's just that I personally think it will happen in the developing world faster, because a lot of people will uh, they'll leapfrog opening a bank. I mean, most people in Mexico don't even have a bank account. Like, it's actually like something like, I think the last time I looked is about
Yeah.
36 or 37% were actually banked. Like, they're going to skip that and they're going to go straight to Bitcoin, in my view. Like, why would you go through all of that ordeal when if you want to take digital payments and etc., like, you can go straight to Bitcoin? I think that will happen in a lot of places. So um, yeah, I kind of rambled on that one. I'm not sure if I answered your question.
No, it's cool. It's cool. Um, so you did a boot camp, right? Specifically for crypto development,
No, it was actually web development.
web development. Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Got it.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
mean, it was something
I'm
I wanted to do, but like in the end, it was something I always wanted to learn, and like I'm glad that I did it, and I still use a lot of it, even though I'm not like a developer. I'm not like a freelance developer. It's not the main thing that I do or anything, but there's still a lot of that I use, and I personally think that everyone should have some kind of training in it, and it always irritated me that I didn't understand it. Like, the web was a mystery to me. Like, I would open up a web page and be like, how the hell is this happening? How does this button do this? And how does all of this data like get exchanged, and how's the back end working, and how's it working with the front end? It all baffled me. So it was something that I always wanted to do. So I have no regrets about going and unlearning it, even though I don't work every day in that now. But yeah, that was the original kind of inspiration.
Hey everybody, hey everybody. Quick break from the podcast to tell you about Language Blend, the best new way to learn Spanish. Language Blend was co-founded by Jake Nomada, friend of the podcast, decade of experience in Latin America, and Jake and his team, they put everything into this program that they wish they had in terms of how to level up quickly with your Spanish language skills. Because the faster that you can get conversationally fluent in Spanish, the better the experience that you're going to have in Latin America. So go to languageblend.com for more information. Yeah, I was just checking because I haven't taken the leap because I think it is a big commitment that you need to allocate time to, but I think it'd be cool to start learning Solidity and uh, being able to do some of the technical side of the crypto. If someone wanted to get into crypto in a bigger way, like maybe they just have a Coinbase account and that's about it. Like, how can someone start getting more involved, learning more, and just basically move beyond Coinbase?
Yeah, I would say that like the first thing is just buy some Bitcoin, even if that is on an exchange like Coinbase, some kind of like centralized exchange. Like, fine. Just the first thing is to just actually own it and to kind of understand what you own. And then I would say just like sending it around. It's like download a wallet on your phone, figure out how to like spin up an address to receive, and then send that Bitcoin to your wallet. try playing around with then sending it to potentially another wallet or sending it to a friend, and have a play with how the different fees work, like changing your fees, and then maybe seeing, okay, what happens, how long does it take to confirm a transaction with these fees, and then maybe you can move on a bit further and try and experiment with the Lightning Network and things like that, and try and learn about that. I think that with all these things, it's just a slow, steady process of trying to educate yourself. Like initially it's going to seem baffling, but I always say to people, like, just try the first step. Like people come to me and be like, look, I want to buy Bitcoin because I think that it's got a lot of value or whatever, but like I don't understand mining, or I don't understand this, and I don't understand. And I just say, like, okay, forget about mining. You want to buy Bitcoin, so learn how to buy Bitcoin, right? Learn how to open an account and exchange, and then just buy it. Don't even learn how to take self custody yet. Just buy the Bitcoin. So just buy $10 of Bitcoin if you want, and then say, okay, now how do I take custody, and learn the next step as it, like, if as your needs evolve, then you can learn the next step. So then it's like, okay, I'll take it to a phone wallet, and then you say, okay, like, how do I use a hardware wallet? How do I, like, properly take this into cold storage, etc. So I think it just, like, learn what you need as you reach that step. I mean, and I'm a Bitcoin guy. I'm not a crypto guy. I went down the crypto rabbit hole as well, like, for a while, and I did believe in it for a long time. And I kind of came back at the end of it after having I made some wins and I made some losses, but in the end, I kind of abandoned, like, crypto as a concept, and kind of just thought, okay, well, like, I believe in Bitcoin. I'm going to focus all my energy on this. So, like, for people who want to learn more about the like crypto stuff, I just can't really give any advice about that. I know that people want to go down that rabbit hole, because I did, and I think it's just a natural thing that you get curious about it. But personally, for me, I just stick with Bitcoin. But I understand that everyone wants to, like, learn about those things, and sometimes you need to go down and maybe, like, buy a few, like, tokens that end up crashing to zero before you kind of go, oh, okay, like, maybe I didn't know as much about this thing that I thought I did. But for me personally, I ended up kind of going down that. I sold all of my, like, altcoins in, I think it was 2020. I just said, right, okay, I'm done with all of this. I'm just going to, like, focus all in on Bitcoin. Um, so, I'm not going to say don't get distracted. But I know some people are like, oh, forget all the shit coins, don't get distracted. I'm like, okay, learn about them, but also, like, learn both sides. Don't just listen to someone's project marketing and say, okay, like, cool, this sounds great because it's got super fast transactions and it's got this, that, and the other, and it's got AI, quantum technology. Actually, like, listen to, try and be critical about it and listen to what the kind of maximalists are saying as well, even just for taking both sides of argument and say, okay, what are the Bitcoin people saying about this project? Why are they saying that? Why haven't they sold all their Bitcoin and bought this thing, kind of thing? So, I guess, like, learn about the technology as well, but also stay very skeptical about marketing is an important point.
All good advice. All good advice. Well, let's get to wrapping up. It's we're recording in Mexico, and it's only like 1 p.m. So I'm sure we both have a lot of stuff to
Yeah.
do today. I think my episodes at night go longer because I'm just like drinking wine and nonsense. But
Nice.
cool, man. Well, take this time to direct the audience wherever you want to direct their attention.
Cool. Yeah. Well, I mean, if you want to hear more of my ramblings and hear, me speaking to people about freedom and self sovereignty and all that good stuff, check out the Staying Free podcast. You can get it on basically all the normal, like, podcast platforms. The Twitter is Staying Free Pod. The link tree is link.tr.ee or something like that /Staying Free Pod. So it's got all the links there to different platforms and stuff. And yeah, like take a listen and reach out to me if you want to reach out to me. I'm always happy to connect with people if people want to chat. And yeah, Vance, thanks for letting me on. Oh, by the way, my audio is normally better as well. I promise it's normally better. My mic decided to play up before
No,
we
it's
started.
perfect. It's perfect.
I
Audio's
have to
good.
mention that because I'm like, yeah, I'm super annoyed. Like, normally I actually take more care out of my audio. My mic has given in on me, but hopefully it'll be good for my next recording. But yeah, Vance, thanks for having me on. It's awesome. I'm glad that you're doing this. I think it's great that you're kind of, like, cultivating a community of people who are living in Latin America, and like, you're definitely getting people excited about all this stuff, and people should be excited about it because like you said, there's a huge opportunity right now to live more free, and people just need to see that freedom's in front of them. Like, people need to kind of, like, just look for those opportunities and it is really exciting. Life's there for the living, right? And I think a lot of people need to kind of just take that by the horns a little bit more. So yeah, like thanks again for having me on. Congrats to all you're doing with the podcast, and I hope that we'll stay in touch. And say hi to my friend Andrew Howard when you speak to him later. I'm sure you'll have a great convo.
Yeah. What should I ask him?
I mean, well, he's just done this recent project about like he's actually got Bitcoin being taught now. He's got a Bitcoin course being taught, I think, in at least one school, if not like a bunch of schools in San Miguel. It's called Meet
Yeah.
Premier Bitcoin, which is I think,
Yeah. That's how I heard about him. I was like, wow,
yeah,
this
yeah,
is
yeah.
sick.
Which is absolutely awesome. Like he's absolutely killing it over there. So he actually when he was here in PV, like the community was small, and it wasn't. It's not a particularly strong community here in PV, but I think he really managed to find his place in the Bitcoin community over there. So that's definitely something to ask him about. But he's an interesting dude, so I'm sure you'll have a great chat.
Awesome. If you think of anything in the next couple hours, just DM me on Twitter. So
Yeah,
Staying Free podcast is Jonny's podcast. If someone wanted to like, what's your favorite episode? If someone wanted to listen to one and get a feel for it, what do you think's the best first episode to send them to?
So I did one for episode, I think it was episode 50. I think maybe about 10 episodes back or something. And it was called The Spirit of Freedom, with two guys they're from the UK. One of them actually lives in Poland now. But we were just talking about all the ideas to do with freedom and self-sovereignty and just kind of like living a authentic life. And it was a really interesting conversation. It was just quite a nice, like mellow one. But there's a load of different ones on there. I mean, if the most recent one I did was with a guy called Guy Swan, who you might have heard of, Vance. He's like quite a big Bitcoiner. And I actually worked with Guy Swan as well. And we did an episode all about libertarian values and all about libertarian ideas, and kind of like going into some real edge cases of it as well. So kind of talking about, where are the limits of libertarian, ideals, like where are the limits of anarchism kind of thing. And, is statism valid in some sense and stuff. So that was an interesting one. So, some of them are a bit more like kind of like philosophical and theoretical, and, some of them more spiritual. There's a bunch of ones. I would say like check out the episode title. Normally it's a good gauge as to what you're going to get from it.
Sick, man. I noticed you do the 0 in front. So I want to see you hit episode 1,000 to screw up the numbers.
Oh, that's true. Yeah, I didn't think about that. It's going to screw it up, isn't it? I should have accounted.
Long ways away. Yeah, it should be 0. Give yourself some runway. No, I'm just joking.
What are you on now?
I think 115 are published. This one will probably be 120 something.
Oh man, that's a lot. Yeah, I mean it's hard work, man. Like I'm sure like it's just people think that podcasting is just an easy. It's just like, okay, just hit record, do an episode, and bam, like we're all done. Like it's just so much work. I mean, there's just endless amounts of stuff to do with them. So yeah, getting to that kind of number is amazing. I mean, I only record once every 2 weeks, which is mainly just because it's what I have time for. But I also tried to make it so that the episodes is like interesting as well. I don't like to just have episodes just kind of for the sake of having an episode. Like I like to pick my guests, and sometimes I'm like, I don't know what guest to have this week, so I won't kind of like force one if I don't have the guest for it. But yeah, I mean it's super hard. So like congrats for breaking the 100 mark. And
thank you.
And
I do 2 a week, man. So the audience, Jonny's doing one every 2 weeks. I hope you guys appreciate how much work this is.
Yeah, that's a lot, man. That is a lot. So yeah, that's impressive. If you can get in 2 episodes a week.
Yeah, shout out to our sponsors, Language Blend, Bitrefill, helping make this possible. But yeah, let's wrap it up. Jonny, this has been another episode of My Latin Life podcast. Again, my guest today, Jonny Hodl, host of the Staying Free podcast. All the links in the show notes. Thanks everyone for listening.